So, hello, and welcome back yet again to a thrilling undersea adventure. At least that's what we're planning on it being, with Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under Said Sea. I, so far, have been really enjoying this. I mean, I know we're only 4 chapters in, but Jules Verne just had such a good way of doing an adventure that surprised me the first time I read when we were reading Journey to the Center of the Earth. I was so taken aback because it felt like more of a modern story, I guess. It's just got something to it that was definitely lacking in Charles Dickens' writing, and I'm not sure what exactly that is, but whatever it is, I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to be reading another 2 chapters. It's halfway decent outside, and I'm getting hope for spring. We had ducks show up and Canadian geese, so now the waterfowl trifecta has re-arrived, which I appreciate. And even though supposedly we have a chance of snow tonight and tomorrow, I don't think it's going to last. And I think we're only supposed to get an inch or two. So maybe it's actually spring. I guess that doesn't matter when you're 20,000 leagues under the sea, but it matters a lot for me. Anyway, it is time. We have met Ned Land, our stalwart harpooner, and a few other members of the crew. I'm hoping we'll meet some more members. We also met Consul, the servant of our professor, and we've met a few interesting people. So maybe soon we'll meet this magical narwhal. We're going to be jumping back in and reading 2 chapters today, beginning with chapter 5, At Random. By July 20th, we had reached the North Pacific. We were at last on the scene of the last frolics of the monster. For 3 months. 3 months, each day of which lasted a century, the Abraham Lincoln plowed all the waters of the North Pacific, running down all the whales signaled, making sharp deviations from her route, veering suddenly from one tack to another, and not leaving one point of the Chinese or Japanese coastline unexplored. And yet nothing was seen. Nothing but the immense waste of waters, nothing that resembled a gigantic narwhal, nor a wreck, nor a floating reef, nor anything at all supernatural. Discouragement took possession of all minds and opened a breach for incredulity. A new sentiment was experienced on board, composed of 3/10 of shame and 7/10 of rage. They all called themselves fools for being taken in by an illusion, and were even more furious at that. The mountains of arguments, piled up for a year, came down all at once, and all everyone thought of was to make up the hours of meals and sleep that they had so foolishly sacrificed. This useless search could be no further prolonged. The Abraham Lincoln had nothing to reproach herself with, having done everything possible to succeed. No crew of the American Navy had shown ever more patience or zeal. The want of success could not be ascribed to it. There was nothing left to do but return. A representation in this sense was made to the commander. The commander kept his ground. The sailors did not hide their dissatisfaction, and the service suffered from it. I don't mean that there was a revolt on board, but after a reasonable period of obstinacy, Captain Farragut asked for 3 days' patience. If in the delay of 3 days the monster had not reappeared, the man at the helm should give 3 turns of the wheel, and the Abraham Lincoln should make for European seas. This promise was made on the 2nd of November. The first effect of it was to rally the spirits of the ship's company, and the ocean was observed with renewed attention. 2 days went by. The next day, 5th of November, was the last of the delay. Japan lay less than 200 miles leeward. 8 bells had just struck as I was leaning over the starboard side. Count Ciel, who was standing near me, was looking straight in front of him, and the crew, perched on the ratlines, were keeping a sharp lookout in the approaching dark. Officers with their night glasses were sweeping the horizon. Looking at Count Ciel, I saw that the brave fellow was feeling slightly in the general influence. At least it seemed like that to me. Perhaps for the very first time, his nerves were vibrating under the action of a sentiment of curiosity. "Well, Count Ciel," I said, "this is your last chance of pocketing $2,000. Will monsieur allow me to tell him that I never counted upon the reward, and if the Union had promised $100,000, it would never be any poorer." "You're right, Count Ciel. This has been a stupid affair after all. We have lost time and patience, and we might just as well have been in France 6 months ago. And on top of all that, we're still going to get laughed at." "Certainly," said Count Ciel. "I think they will laugh at monsieur, and I must say—" "What? What must you say, Count Ciel?" "That it will serve monsieur right. When one has the honor to be a savant like monsieur, one does not expose—" Count Ciel did not finish his compliment. In the midst of the general silence, Ned Land's voice was heard calling out, "Look out there! The thing that we are looking for, it's on our weather beam." And that is the end of chapter 4. With perhaps the monster sighted? Perhaps. It kind of looks like it might be. And by Ned Land, of all people, the one who didn't believe in it at all. So I'm going to grab a drink, loosen up my lips a little bit, and we will move on to chapter 6 in just a minute. And now it is time for chapter 6 of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, which is titled "With All Steam On." At this cry, the entire crew rushed towards the harpooner. At 2 cables' length from the Abraham Lincoln, upon her starboard quarter, the sea seemed to be illuminated right below the surface. The monster lay some fathoms below the sea, and threw out the very intense but inexplicable light mentioned in the reports of several sea captains. The light described an immense and much elongated oval, in the center of which was condensed to a focus the overpowering brilliancy of which died out by successive graduation. "It's only an amalgamation of phosphorus particles," said one of the officers. "No," I said with conviction. "Never did Pholas or Safie produce such a light as that. That light is essentially electric. Besides, see? Look out, it moves forwards towards us." At this, a general cry arose. "Silence," called the captain. "Up with the helm! Reverse engines!" The frigate thus tried to escape, but the supernatural animal approached her with a speedy double on all of her own. Stupefaction more than fear kept us mute and motionless. The animal gained upon us. It made the round of the frigate, which was then going at the rate of 14 knots, and it enveloped her with its electric ring like a luminous dust. Then it went 2 or 3 miles away, leaving a phosphoric trail like the stem of an express locomotive. All at once, from the dark limit of the horizon, where it went to gain its momentum, the monster rushed towards the frigate with a frightful speed and then went out, not diving, for its brilliancy did not die, but all at once it just turned off. And then it reappeared on the other side of the ship, either going around or going under the hull. A collision might have occurred at any moment, which would have been fatal to us. All of the crew stayed up that night. No one thought about going to sleep. The Abraham Lincoln, not being able to compete in speed, was kept under half steam. On its side, the narwhal imitated the frigate, let the waves rock at will, and seemed determined not to leave the scene of combat. Around midnight, though, it disappeared, dying out like a large glowworm. At 7 minutes to 1 in the morning, a deafening whistle was heard, like that produced by a column of water driven out with violence. The captain, Ned Land, and I were on the poop then, peering with eagerness through the profound darkness. "Ned Land," said the commander, "have you often heard whales roar?" "Yes, Captain, often, but never such a whale as I encountered now, and earned $2,000 by seeing first." "That is true," said the captain. "You have a right to that prize, but tell me, is it the same noise that whales make?" "Yes, sir, it is. But this one is incomparably louder. It is not to be mistaken. It's certainly a cetacean there in our seas. With your permission, sir, we will have a few words with this whale at daybreak." "If he's in the humor to listen, Mr. Land," I said, in an unconvinced tone of voice. "You let me get within the length of 4 harpoons," said Ned, "and he will be obliged to listen to me." "But in order to approach him," said the captain, "I shall have to put a whaler at your disposition." "Well, certainly, sir." "But that will be risking the lives of my men." "Mine as well," said Ned. At about 2 a.m., the luminous focus reappeared, not any less intense, about 5 miles to the windward side of the frigate. Notwithstanding the distance and the noise of the wind and sea, the loud strokes of this animal's tail were distinctly heard, and even its panting and breathing. Until daylight, we were all on the alert, and then the fishing tackle was prepared. The first mate loaded the blunderbuss, which throw harpoons at a distance of at least a mile, and also long duck guns with explosive bullets which inflict mortal wounds even on the most powerful of animals. Ned Land contented himself with sharpening his harpoon. It was a terrible weapon in his hands. At 6 a.m., day began to break, and with the first glimmer of dawn, the electric light of the narwhal disappeared. At 7, a very thick sea fog obscured the atmosphere, and the very best looking glass could not pierce it. I climbed the mizzen and found some officers already perched up on the mastheads. At 8, the mist began to clear away. Suddenly, just like last night, Ned Land's voice was heard calling, "The thing in question, off to the port quarter." All eyes were turned towards the point indicated. There, a mile and a half from the frigate, a large black body emerged more than a yard above the water. Its tail, violently agitated, produced a considerable eddy. An immense track, dazzlingly white, marked the passage of the animal and made a long curve. The frigate approached the cetacean, and I could see it well. I estimate its length at 150 feet. As to its other dimensions, I could only imagine they were in proportion. While I was watching it, two jets of vapor and water sprang from its vent holes and ascended to a height of 50 yards, thus fixing my opinion as to how it breathed. The crew were all waiting impatiently for the captain's orders. Farragut, after attentively examining the animal, called for the chief engineer. "Is your steam up, sir?" said the captain. "Yes, sir," said the engineer. "Then make up your fires, and put on all steam." 3 cheers greeted this order. The hour of combat was upon us. Some minutes after, the funnels of the frigate were giving out torrents of black smoke, and the deck was shaking under the trembling of the boilers. The Abraham Lincoln, propelled by her powerful screw, went straight at the animal, who let her approach to within half a cable's length, and then, as if by disinclining to dive, made a little attempt at flight and contented itself with keeping its distance. This pursuit lasted about 3/4 of an hour, without the frigate gaining even a yard upon the cetacean. It was evident she would never reach it at that rate. This made the captain twist his beard with impatience. "Ned Land," called the captain, "do you think I had better have the boats lowered?" "No, sir," said Ned, "for that animal won't be caught unless it chooses." "So what do we do?" "Force steam if you can, Captain, and I, with your permission, will post myself under the bowsprit, and if we get within a harpoon's length, I'll hurl one." "Very well, Ned," said the captain. "Engineer, put on more pressure." Ned went to his post, the fires were increased, the screw revolved 43 times a minute, and the steam poured out of the valves. The frigate was going 18 miles and 5/10 an hour, but the animal was going 18 and 5/10 an hour as well. For yet another hour, the frigate kept up that speed without gaining a yard. It was humiliating for one of the quickest vessels of the American Navy. The crew began to get very angry. Some sailors swore at the animal, who did not deign to answer. The captain not only twisted his beard, he began to chew on it too, and the engineer was called up again. "Have you reached your maximum of pressure?" said the captain. "Yes, sir." The captain ordered him to do everything he could without absolutely blowing up the vessel, and coal was at once piled into the fire. The speed of the frigate increased, and her mast shook again. This time she was making 19 miles and 3/10, but the cetacean did 19 miles and 3/10 just as easily as 18 and 5. What a chase. I cannot describe the emotion that made my whole being vibrate again. Ned Land kept at his post, harpoon in hand, and the animal allowed itself to be approached several times. A few it was so near that the Canadian raised his hand to hurl the harpoon, when the animal rushed away at a speed of at least 30 miles an hour, and even during our maximum speed, it bullied the frigate, going round and round. Fury burst from everyone's lips. We were not further advanced at 12 than we had been at 8 that morning, and Captain Farragut then made up his mind to employ more direct methods. "Ah," he said, "so that animal goes faster than my ship? Well, we'll see if he'll go faster than a conical bullet. Master, send your man to the forecastle." The forecastle gun was immediately loaded and pointed, and fired, but the ball passed some feet above the cetacean, which was about a half-mile away. "Let someone else try," called the captain. $500 to whoever will hit the beast." An old gunner, with a gray beard, I think I see now his calm face as he approached the gun, put it into position and took aim. A loud report followed, mingled with the cheers of the crew. The bullet reached its destination. It struck the animal, but, gliding off the rounded surface, fell into the sea 2 miles away. "Malediction!" said the captain. "That animal must be clad in 6-inch iron plate, but I'll catch it if I have to blow up my frigate." It was to be hoped that the animal would be exhausted, and that it would not be indifferent to fatigue like a steam engine. But the hours went on, and it showed no sign of exhaustion. It has to be said in praise of the Abraham Lincoln that she went on inflaggably. I cannot reckon the distance that we made on this unfortunate day as less than 300 miles, but night came and closed around us and the heaving ocean. And then I believed our expedition to be at an end, and that we would see the fantastic animal no more. But I was mistaken. For at 10:50 p.m. the electric light reappeared 3 miles windward to the frigate, as clear as intense as it had been the night before. The narwhal seemed motionless. Perhaps fatigued by its day's work, it was sleeping in its billowy cradle. That was the chance by which the captain was resolved to profit. He gave his order. The Abraham Lincoln was kept up at half steam and advanced cautiously so as not to awaken her adversary. It is not rare to meet in open sea with whales fast asleep, and Ned Land had harpooned many of them in that condition. He went back to his post under the bowsprit. The frigate noiselessly approached and stopped at 2 cables' length from the animal. No one breathed. A profound silence reigned on deck. We were not 1,000 feet from the burning focus, the light of which increased and dazzled our eyes. At that moment, leaning on the forecaster bulwark, I saw Ned Land below me, holding the martingale with one hand, and with his other brandishing his terrible harpoon, scarce 20 feet away from the motionless animal. All at once he threw, and I heard the stroke of the weapon, which seemed to have hit something hard. The electric light suddenly went out, and 2 enormous waterspouts fell on the deck of the frigate, running like a torrent from fore to aft, upsetting men and breaking the lashing of our spars. A frightful shock followed that, and I was thrown over the rail before I could stop myself, and fell into the sea. And that is the end of chapter 6. Bit of a cliffhanger, but I mean, they met the animal. I'm not sure how much I believe that this is a narwhal. I've never heard of a metal-clad whale. I mean, there are many things I've never heard of, but a metal-plated whale is definitely one of those. Although I think that they discovered a lobster that instead of calcium incorporates, like, not actual iron, but an iron oxide in its shell. So who knows? There are more things on heaven and earth, Horatio. So that was very cool. I enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. Please do hit the thumbs up on your way out, and I will see you tomorrow.